Welcome to the Unfiltered Healing Podcast. I'm Dr. Rachel Hamill, connecting you with alternative medicine innovators. On today's episode, we're interviewing Dr. Brian Trainer, a naturopathic physician and expert in peptide and peptide therapy. In this clip, he's going to explain what peptides are. If you enjoy this clip, make sure you check in the show notes for the link to the full episode on Spotify or iTunes. Now back to my discussion with Brian Trainer. My personal understanding of what I've been learning with them is that they help to encourage better cellular communication. So that's kind of the easiest explanation that I can tell my patients. But what is a peptide?
True definition of a peptide that in the body is our understanding is 40 amino acids or less, a sequence of 40 amino acids or less that's basically exists in a certain configuration that is unique. And so if you think about all the different carbon molecules and amino acid, different things, there's a lot of different ways like to connect them. And it's really the structure. So like BPC is a 15 amino acid sequence that has a certain structure that's different than even other 15 amino acid structures in the body. And amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So a polypeptide is multiple peptides then connected through another. So it's kind of like when you start thinking logarithmic math, like the possibilities are somewhat endless, even within 40 amino acid, not within the 40, but when we think of how many different ways things could be combined, that's the biggest challenge. So amino acids, they're really the 20 key building blocks of proteins combined in different organizations, typically 40 amino acids or less. That's been somewhat debated, and some say up to 60 now. But that's the general. They're basically small proteins, and small molecules have a bigger effect. And the thing that I guess on both sides to relate them to are the individual amino acids, like people take glycine or that we would get from, let's say, animal red meat. You can take a therapeutic amount of glycine for certain conditions, certain goals, and see changes in that. So that's one amino acid. And then we have larger molecules. Hormones are probably the best example. Many people understand the basics of hormones. But hormones are basically signaling molecules, to go back to what you just said about peptides, that we generally know where they come from, and then they have to travel through the bloodstream to have an effect on a different part of the body. That's the main definition of a hormone. There's other endocrine products. So endocrine just means something released in the body that goes somewhere else in the body. There's also paracrine, that's just cell to cell, and then autocrine within a cell signaling. So there's a lot of cool words here. Without giving all the biochemistry of 2+ years in school, peptides, anyone that's been through a basic biochemistry course would know the term peptide. But then peptide therapy are generally the ones that we kind of understand what they're doing or have a specific effect on the immune system, on the inflammatory cascade in the body, different inflammatory cascades, on, let's say, tissue-specific brain healing or neuron healing, on, let's say, collagen in the skin, on hair growth, on things that we somewhat understand mechanisms of, and we try to support that pathway. Hormones are large molecules. Probably the best example to put these two in perspective is growth hormone. Growth hormone is somewhere around 170 amino acids long. So itself, and it's made in the pituitary gland at night, generally while we're sleeping in our cycles of deep sleep, but throughout the night. And growth hormone helps our body repair, recover. And if it gets dysregulated, it absolutely can be a factor in certain cancers and things. But many patients have low growth hormone production, mostly due to poor sleep or pituitary function or other structural brain challenges that you probably help a lot of people, even unknowingly, if they're not getting IGF-1 tested or increased growth hormone. That's probably one way that craniopaths. I'm using growth hormone as an example because people kind of understand that it's made at night. It helps us repair, and it's actually, honestly, testosterone should be more thought of as growing things, whereas growth hormone is really helping to often help patients stay lean and feel good, but also feel physically refreshed when they wake up. So I think a lot of what even parts of craniopathy is helping with is improving pituitary function, I bet. So in part, growth hormone. So you can actually use growth hormone like bodybuilders do. You can use it for certain medical conditions. But when you give a hormone in the body, typically your body doesn't make as much of it or as naturally as it otherwise would. It's very hard. You really it's debatable, but it's hard to supplement hormones. Meaning, if you give it, the body is designed as too intelligent that there'll be a negative feedback loop that other hormones will get adjusted and your body won't make as much of them. So testosterone is probably the easier example in that case. Whereas if a guy uses testosterone replacement, his luteinizing hormone in his pituitary goes down to 0 usually, and he's no longer sending the signals from the brain to the testes to make testosterone. So growth hormone is a good example because there are a whole class of growth hormone secretagogue peptides that are, instead of that 170 or more amino acid chain that we generally know where it comes from and how to measure it, we can use peptides that are much, much smaller that can stimulate the production of growth hormones. Really, the release of growth hormone would be a better way of saying it, from the pituitary at night to result in an increase in IGF-1, which is a measurable marker of growth hormone. And we can see a lot of the benefits. And even more, I think what's attracting a lot of people to it is we can use them for a set period of time and see benefits even years later, potentially 6 to 12 months later. There's studies showing after a round of certain growth hormone secretagogue peptides that you can see improved growth hormone production even later. So that's unique in what regenerative medicine or other optimizing hormone treatments have seemed to be available in the last few decades. So yeah, that's one way to summarize kind of what is a peptide.